What is going on, guys? It's Travis. We're back with another Hero's Journey live stream edition. And in this Hero's Journey live stream edition, we are going to talk about some pretty, I would say, controversial issues. Now, let me just do a quick sound check to see that you can hear me and everything's okay. And I think it is, but I'm not sure because it is not playing on the videos. But who cares? We're going to keep diving in. So this is an album surfboard right here. Now, what makes this board great is that it has a lot of volume. Now, you can see here, the middle of this, nice and thick. And you'll see the thumbnail, thick with two C's. Now, volume gets a weird bad rap because nowadays it is kind of what a lot of people only think about. Um, Now, I think that it is really important, and because it's so important, it gets kind of overlooked. Now, sorry, I'm checking one more time because for some reason it says I'm live. I click it, and then I'm not seeing nothing. So maybe I'm live, maybe I'm not. Fun YouTube things happening here. Oh, I hear it. I see me. I see and hear me. I see and hear me. We're live. We're in the stew. All right, sorry, y'all. Let's continue. So, now it is pretty dark looking. Maybe it's just me. Let's see. Let's see now. Sorry, I'm a professional. All right, we'll go with that. So the reason why, we're gonna go through a few things why you want more volume in your surfboard. You want a thicker surfboard. I grew up in the 90s. Now, in the 90s, they had us riding these thin 17 and 3/4 wide potato chips. This is what we learned on. Well, actually, I learned on a pretty thick, almost like this board, 1980s type board, which, is a better board to learn on than a super thin potato chip board because you're going to essentially start with a thick board and work your way up to a thinner board. Now, here's where it gets lost in translation because a lot of people, they start out surfing, they think they're Kelly Slater, we all do. And you too quickly go to a new volume. Now, you want to go to the new volume because the internet tells you should, and the shops online, the charts tell you should, and everyone's saying to ride these certain volume boards. Now, the problem is that you're not Kelly Slater. You're not Andy Irons. Shout out up there. You're just starting out. You're just figuring it out. And when you skip the step of essentially trying to speed through, rush, getting to a smaller board, what's going to happen is you're going to miss out on a lot of fundamentals that will help you be a better surfer by learning how to ride a bigger board with more volume. Now, the video is looking a lot better now, and I am pleased. So, a little bit about my journey is when I started surfing, I rode the potato chips. I got older. And then one day, I'm not sure what happened. Well, actually, here's what happened is before these fishy boards you saw in the thumbnail were out, everyone was riding potato chips. Everyone was riding thin, skinny, pointy nose boards. Shout out Kelly Slater. Even Tommy Surfs talks about this, how back in the day, Kelly Slater really redesigned surfboards to be thinner nose, skinnier. And if you look at Kelly's boards today, that's kind of what he's still even riding, very skinny, small boards. When he makes a mid-length, it's still not very mid-lengthy. So, but back to the point was, so we didn't know about like volume growing up. Volume wasn't even on the board. It wasn't a thing. No one knew about it. All you knew about it was the height, the thickness, and the width. Now, a board can have a lot of those similar things, but be a super different volume, or it could be this board, 37 liters of volume, is the same as a 7-foot mid-length board. Kelly's S-Boss has 37 liters of volume or something. I don't know exactly if it does or not. But that just goes to show that you're not always going to have volume. Isn't just some measurement that goes up and goes down with the board going bigger and going smaller. So growing up, it wasn't on the boards. We didn't know what volume was. So we thought if the board was longer, it would float you more. Shorter, it would float you less. And then enter the pod mod, which I think really revolutionized surfing. And I jumped on the pod mod right away. I don't know how. It was the original pod mod, so it was the pod. And I remember surfing, being lucky enough to surf in Australia with it, surfing all these really good waves. And essentially what happened to me was I got so used to riding like a smaller, wider, more volume board. And this is when volume started to enter the sphere of being put on the board and being more important to you as a consumer, a surf consumer. So the pod that I rode was 5'10", around 35 liters. And I don't even remember the width and the thickness, 21 width, maybe 2 3/4, 2.5. But I noticed with the pod, I mean, that's already a lot of volume to put into a 5'10". Now, if you had a 5'10" back in the day, it'd be a 5'10" with, 28, 30 liters of volume. It wouldn't be written on it. And it would be a short board. It would be kind of sinky. You would need some wave. It wouldn't really be a groveler. So the pod really started, I think, the revolution of these more volume heavy boards that were shorter, wider, thicker, and volume became more of a front runner in why you would buy a board. Now, fast forward to 2024, and I mean, I'd be one to say that volume to me is one of the most important things in a board, because really in the end, what volume is going to do is it's going to either displace the water when it goes in, and it's going to do that a lot or a little. The more volume is going to do it less. So really what volume is, it's kind of like the measurement of the water displaced once it's pushed down. Don't quote me on this, but this is kind of hard to even measure. So drop it in the chat. I don't even know how really these shapers are measuring the volume. They probably have a model and they do what they got to do. I think there is a mathematical equation, but what really it is like how much you're going to sink or float. So when you look on these surfboard charts, though, you're going to see, they're going to say, they might say your ability. They'll say you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, expert, etc. And you'll notice as you go down the chart, and it's usually based on your weight and your height, is what volume you're going to ride. And if you're a better surfer, you're going to ride less volume. And if you're a more beginner, less good surfer, you're going to ride more volume. Now, this is because once you're up and riding on the board and you have speed, the volume doesn't matter as much because now you have speed and momentum. And actually, that's where it's going to do the opposite effect. And more volume is actually going to hurt you and is going to make it harder to turn. You're going to bog more, etc. Now, this is where my journey of going crazy volume ended up helping me a lot. Because as you do go more volume, you do have to move the board around more. You have to kind of be stronger, and you learn a lot of muscle memory, like of moving the board, pushing it around, and you end up kind of being more of a power surfer, moving more board around. And even like 2, 3, 4 liters can be a lot. Like you'll notice on this Album Twinsman, it's a 6.0. And again, it has 37 liters of volume, which is kind of a lot for a 6.0 because you're going to be a 6.0 shortboard that has 31 liters of volume, 32. But what it does here is a lot of the volume sits right on the deck and in the middle of the board going towards the bottom of the board. Other boards, like a lot of the Firewire Machado shapes, will have less volume by the tail and actually have more volume up here on the top half of the board. And that will kind of affect how the board rides. But in the end, once these boards started having more volume as the boards got smaller, I think people realize that, I can actually ride a smaller board. And if I add more volume, then that can help me catch the wave. And then if I'm good enough and I'm actually going to put some effort, I can turn the board and surf the board better. Because when I get on like a little potato chip board now, a 5, 10, 30 liter board, it feels like a skim board. And I noticed that you don't get as much drive. you're not propelled down the line as fast. You have to do more of the work. When you add some volume to the board does more of the work for you. Now here's where I think in my last live stream I was talking about tails, and this is where I think the tails end up being more important as you enter more volume. Now see, the Twinsman has more of a swallowtail, but the swallowtail is actually kind of like this weird mini one. But more importantly, the Twinsman tail, it doesn't get super thin. It stays pretty normal thickness back here, and that's why the Twinsman, even though they kind of market it as a groveler, it's not really a groveler. You need a good wave to push this thing around. And you can tell by when you're holding the board and when you're paddling on the board, because even though there is a lot of volume, the tail, it stays thick enough where it doesn't really want to like zippy around in terms of like what you think a swallow twin fin would do. It'd be like sliding out and be like that. But this actually holds super well because it has a little dig in here and then so much volume here, and it stays super thick that I think that helps it hold to kind of be more of slightly arching. You can still pivot this, but that's where the fins come in too. But it's going to have more hold in the tail, whereas the mashup, the tail here, it gets like half as thin as this towards the back, and then it's a little wider too, I think, right here in the back. But because it gets so thin, it actually pivots easier and turns easier, even though it's a 3-fin board. Now, it also is a little less volume and a little shorter. Therefore, you are going to be able to turn it a little easier. But that's why, you see your friend or you see this pro on this super small potato chip board and like, oh, that's cool. Oh, the size chart says to get this. That's my volume. That's what I should get. But what a lot of people do is they do that, and I think they underestimate what their skill level is, and or just the fact that as you're getting older, there's no reason to not let your surfing adapt to more volume, especially as your whole body has to work. The more volume you have, the less you're going to have to work paddling, all that stuff. Now, there are extremes is when you go way too much volume, then you're going to not be able to duck dive the board. It is going to get a little more boggier to turn, etc. But I think the key is to find a good middle ground, and then actually don't be scared to go more volume and then get used to the board. Because you'll notice that for me, like I rode, Varga board's 8-foot fun board essentially. But I learned how to like whip that thing around and do roundhouses, and shout out back in the day, some of that first year Virginia Beach was like a pro at just longboarding, but would ride the longboard like a shortboard. And it was super impressive. And that's what you can kind of end up doing when you learn this riding more volume trick, is you get better at having more board. And then when you do go down to your smaller board, you can ride it way better because you're kind of like taking off the training wheels. But you're going to realize that, oh, sometimes I actually like the more volume, and you get so used to it that it's an interesting concept of how more volume, you can get too used to it, and then you kind of get trapped in having too much volume, and you just like it so much. And you're like, you jump on your friend's board, and he has a normal 5'9" potato chip, and you're like, oh, this thing sucks, can't even paddle, can't get into waves, etc. So that's why you've noticed this trend of, I think, mid-lengths getting more popular, and just these typical like new Rob Machado shapes getting mimicked by people, and even the album boards that I think a lot of people are kind of copying now, where they have fuller rails, more volume. Even some of his boards in the thumbnail, the Plasmic, the 510, I think has 38 liters of volume, which is kind of unheard of. I put a sweet potato in the thumbnail too. That's like the most crazy volumed out groveler ever. It's 510, has 45 liters, I think. So you're almost getting, when you get to that point, it's too much maybe, unless your intention is to ride like little tiny waves and to have a shortboard as opposed to riding a longboard. So yeah, I think that, if you're still starting out, don't try to speed rush through the learning phase. Like that's why everyone learns on an 80-liter Wavestorm, because on that Wavestorm, and yes, it is 80 liters. of foam on the Wavestorm, and it's a foam board. So you're going to be so freaking floaty that once you learn on the Wavestorm and then you try to learn on like a real surfboard, even if it's a similar size to a Wavestorm, it's super difficult. And that learning curve can actually throw a lot of people off so much that they kind of stop surfing, or they can't get past the foam board to the real board because they try to go too small too quick. Like you can, that's a big no-no. You can't go from a 8-foot Wavestorm to like a 6'3". I don't know. Well, here's a good example: is you want to go from the 8.0 Wavestorm to the 8.0 longboard, like the same board just in fiberglass. Then you want to go from the 8-foot fiberglass to the 6'6" pod mod torque-esque kind of board. You want to go gradual and keep volume as like your main indicator that the board is right for you and your level. Now, when you look at these charts, pretend you're like the crappiest surfer, beginner, and go down the chart and just even see what that volume is and be like, all right, let me even try that just for fun as a good surfer. Because again, you'll be surprised how it gets regurgitated that you need to be riding this certain volume for your size and weight. Like for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense because people like to ride different size skateboards or different size snowboards. Now, there might be a guideline to their weight and height and what board to ride, but your style of riding, and you're just getting older. You're not getting younger. So you might as well save your body a little bit and keep some volume in the board so you're not just wearing and tearing your body if the goal is to continue to surf forever. I mean, shout out Pops. His goal when he skis or does any activities is to do it again the next day, and I've borrowed that goal. So whenever I'm surfing, it's always like, all right, what's the goal of today? It's to surf again tomorrow or surf again the next day. So that means I don't have to go for some crazy air and land it. That means if I miss a wave, it's okay. Because if my goal is to surf again, why is going for some crazy thing going to help me surf again? If buying a little skimboard surfboard, how is that going to help me surf again when I'm super sore or I'm not catching waves or I'm frustrated from the day? Now, this even kind of happened with the mashup. Shout out mashup. Go watch my mashup review. But I rode the 510 in the wave pool, and then I bought the 5.9 like hilariously on a whim at a surf shop. I'm just checking the focus. Oh, it looks very nice. It's a very beautiful shot. Just like a surf shop. I had the 510. I had the 5.9. Now on the thing, you'll see the 510 is 35.8 liters. The 5.9 is 34.03 liters or 34.3 liters. That's only 1.5 liters and an inch of difference. But the boards ride way different. And the 5.9 to me is like a shortboard potato chip. You're zinging it around. It's like, whoo. And the 510 was a lot more like a pod mod, where it was just a lot more flowy, not as snappy, but like really perfect. So, yesterday I had like a 2.5-hour marathon session on the mashup, and it actually went really good. But then today I noticed, because I went so hard and the board is a little less volume than I'm used to, my back was extremely sore. My shoulders were super sore. And it was like, and I didn't even surf today because I was like so sore. Now that's when, shout out Tommy Surfs, maybe you do have the mashup in 510 or 511 or some other board that's bigger volumed. Then now you can, all right, today I feel I'm sore. I can ride the bigger volume board. So that's why it's good that in your quiver to have these different volumes and really focus on that volume. Because to me, that's the biggest indicator of how the board's going to paddle and be. I mean, I've rode a 5.7 two fish that was 35 liters. Paddles just as good, maybe even a little better than the 5.9 mashup, which is a similar liters. Now, how it's a smaller board? Well, it's wider, and it does have a little bit more volume, I think. But it just goes to show how if you just precisely volume out your volumes to what you're going to ride every day, you're going to be struggling, because those charts, like it's funny, like the pros almost market boards now for a pro or something. Like when you watch these pros, they're riding like tiny, tiny boards. And like a lot of us aren't the typical surfer. We're not skinny arms, skinny neck. We're like, for me, you got the thunder thighs, thick 2Cs. You got, the bod right here. You got so you're just gonna be sinking these tiny boards. And you're looking at the chart and you're like, well, my weight says that. Like, why isn't this working out? Well, it's just because like your shape matters too. It's not just your weight or your height. Like you could be 6'0", 180, but just like really skinny and just like, needle, or 5'8" and like 180 and really stocky. And if you looked at the chart, I mean, you might be a similar volume just because it's only a 2-inch difference and similar weight, but you're actually a really different person and you might even surf a lot different. So a lot goes into the volume of a surfboard, and I think everyone's riding to less volume, like straight up. Even everyone that's good, like everyone is riding to less volume. Now I'm probably just wrong because I'm an outlier here, but I noticed that as I rode bigger boards for a while, and as I'm coming back to like my actual volume on these charts, I still won't go to like my actual volume. I'll still ride a few more liters because I don't think I'm losing anything. Like there is an extreme for sure, but like the 5.9 mashup, 34 liters. When I talk to people who have a mashup, a lot of people got the 5.6 or the 5.7. And that's what the chart even kind of says. But then when I talk to these people who got the 5.6, 5.7, a lot of them admit they're like, I kind of wish I got a little bigger. Like they don't actually think they sized the board properly because they got the chart or just whatever, and everyone's riding these super small boards. They get the mashup in a 5.6, and they're like, crap, it's sick, but it's like I noticed because the 5.9 has a similar issue where it's almost like I want a teeny bit more board sometimes to like get it going and to really get it going. And if you just go too small, too less volume, that skimboardy type feel isn't necessarily what you want. Like the drive and the power, it will come from the fins, but the volume and the push of the board with you will help you accelerate that as well. And as you get better with kind of not listening to those size charts, I say there's always got a little bit more volume than the size chart says. You're going to notice that like you're going to catch more waves, you're going to have more fun, you're going to be less sore, you're going to become a better surfer. Like I don't know if I'm going to guarantee it, but I think so. I think so because I definitely saw it myself where now that I'm coming back down to reality and not riding mid lengths all the time and big long boards. I ride these little boards now that are still kind of big for some people, like the 6.0 album here. I talk to people and they're like, this board is an awesome board, but it's on off ramp a bunch. A lot of people get this board thinking they're going to be like Josh Kerr, and they get into 5.4 and then they ride it and they're like, dude, I can't even ride this thing. So when I got it into 6.0, 37 liters, like it's already kind of big. But I talked to someone who got the 5.10, which is 35, 36 liters, and he's like, dude, I couldn't figure it out. It wouldn't go. You should get the bigger board. So I think what's happening is a lot of these newer boards, they're putting more volume into them, and you should just kind of listen to the shaper and go with a little more volume, especially if in the description they're telling you to go a little more volume. I think that's super important, and a lot of Rob Machado's newer boards and a lot of the album boards will say that. And even someone like Matt Parker, the boards he rides are normally bigger versions of the stock boards or just the bigger models or the more volume models. So yeah, I think it's a super interesting concept because again, like when I grew up, this whole volume thing, it wasn't even written on the board. You didn't ever ask what's the volume. But now I think it's the most important thing. And a lot of people will agree. And now there's a funny little like counteraction where I think I can't remember the channel or TNC Designs has a cool video kind of about how volume doesn't matter. But he's kind of being tongue in cheek because he goes through like why it doesn't matter and what kind of happens to the surfboard. and how like a 6-foot board and a 5'4" could have the same volume if you design it the right way. And then where is the volume? Is the volume up by the nose? Is the volume down by the tail? That's going to affect a lot how the board rides, especially in a board like the sweet potato or the baked potato. It's so much volume at the tail. I mean, at the up here too. But the sweet potato is like the tail down here is like so freaking wide that when you try to turn that, that is when you enter the kind of the volume is kind of holding you back, and you have to kind of do these like long sway turns. But that's like the most extreme you're gonna get. So I'm not saying you have to go that crazy, especially for like a growler type board. But say you have like a short board, like a 6.0 short board made for good waves. 2 more liters of volume is going to have you go faster down the wave because you're going to have more board, more speed, more velocity because the board is going to carry faster. You're going to work less hard to do that too because the board is going to do more of the work. When you fall and you paddle back out, you're going to paddle out easier. Like there's all these kind of pros that I think what happens, it's almost kind of like the funny 55-year-old guy back in the day paddling out on a potato, like a real potato chip, and the waves kind of sucked. And then you're in Virginia Beach, Virginia at First Street, and the waves are like garbage. And this 55-year-old paddles out on the 5'10", 18 and 1/2, 2-inch thick board, and they're just not catching anything. And they can't paddle, and they're paddling hard, they can't catch anything. They go in the wave, they're pumping. Like that's the other extreme of going, not enough volume. So I think there's a little bit of like pride, and there's a little bit of just what the internet's telling you, what the pros are doing, etc. So you have to realize like we're not all pros. Like we can't do what they're doing. I mean, I obviously can, but a lot of you normies out there unfortunately can't. But like you'll get there one day, don't worry. But I just love talking about and figuring out, surfboard shapes and this kind of stuff. And it's a bummer that they cost $1,000 because you want to experiment. Now, this whole used market, I think, actually is getting better, where now you can just buy used boards, sell used boards. You can almost treat it as like a rental program, and you buy a used board from OfferUp or shout out Boardle is the new one. You buy it used, you sell it, you don't lose that much. So you can kind of just do that. For me personally, I kind of like to use a board for a while, and it takes me a while to get used to a board. So I'm not one to like buy a board and then like have it dialed right away or not, because it just takes me a while to get used to a board. Like I can have a board for 3 months and still kind of hate it, and then one day be like, oh wait, this board's sick. Like I'll be transparent here. That's what kind of happened to the album board. Again, I kind of fell into the marketing hype, and I really wanted one, and it looks really cool. I was finally like addicted to twin fins, so I got the album board. I went to the store and bought it, so that was a cool experience. Definitely the most expensive surfboard I've ever bought in my life, but I thought it was pretty cool to just go to the album shop in San Clemente, like buy this super nice piece of art that pretty much everyone's copying now. Like I'm seeing all these boards. They have the resin tint. They have the rails are kind of colored like that. They have this quick indentation right here to the swallowtail, and then even kind of the step down rail thing. This kind of like rail that goes down, and then it's like almost like a platform. You're seeing a lot of this come back, where this is more of like a 1980s shape, where it's kind of not super wide but thick with 2 C's, and kind of what we used to ride before Kelly Slater reinvented the surfboard with Simon Anderson and made potato chips that Andy Irons and Bruce Irons rode, and then that's what surfing became, was these pointy nose, squash tail, thruster boards that you had to ride on tour, and you had to ride it, and those were 25 liters of volume. So it can be done, but what's your goal with surfing? Is your goal to be a professional surfer on the tour, or is your goal to catch as much waves as you can and like have fun and then surf the next day? So I think that pretty much wraps it up with my little volume tangent. Drop some comments below if you agree, if you wholeheartedly disagree. Again, I think I'm kind of an outlier where I ride more volume and I will continue to do so. I won't even go below a certain volume anymore. I know the volume, pretty much the mashup, 34 liters. I'm 180, 170 to 185, 10. I won't go below 34 liters. I mean, I'll ride a friend's 31, 32, 33 in the water, but I'm not going to buy. Now I know 34 is like my cutoff. And even the mashups in helium, it's more buoyant than a PU. So in PU, it's like I probably wouldn't go below 35.5. Now, these are crazy sounding numbers. This is like, dude, you're crazy. So I'm like an extreme outlier here. But I think I can at least vouch for my skill level that it's helped me a lot. Like when I'm surfing, I catch a lot of waves. I'm always scrapping around. I'm catching a lot of waves. I'm paddling a lot. And that's because my boards have more volume and they allow me to do so. So I appreciate everyone tuning in to another Hero's Journey. Smash that subscribe button hard. You got to smash it. A lot of y'all, you watch, you don't subscribe. I don't like that. You got to smash that subscribe. You got to drop your comment. You got to hit like. There's a bunch of things you got to do. I'm sorry. But the most important is subscribe because all y'all ain't subscribing. I don't like it. So I'm going to grab this little Tinsman. I'm going to go shred some sick waves. So till next time, we out of here. Peace be your journey. Oh, I'm trying to end the live stream. It's not letting me. Peace. There we go. Peace.